The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Hope you're doing all right. Numbers to get in. 489-1240, 489-1240, or wherever you hear us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 1-800-825-5865. Always send emails, chris@hailvarsity.com, and can comment and interact on the stream when you log on and watch the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Hail Varsity Twitter, also Hail Varsity Radio at HVarsity Radio, and can give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, and yes, Connor Clark at C_Clark_27. We will get you some Ben Gay or something for your wrists and fingers when you're done typing that in. But, hey, good to have everybody in. We'll dive into some, topical questions, some question marks about the upcoming season. Mike Babcock will join us from Hail Varsity. Babber's already partying in the green room in that football office. Babber's with us in 15 minutes. I did get word back from Mike Schuhart from Wilderness Ridge. Shuey says he loves us, but he's slammed.
Fair enough. For a second there, I was like, oh, man, I didn't prepare for the British Open at all.
No, Shuey, what do you think? Send us your picks. Dude, member guest, can't do it. Sorry. So sometime down the road, a week from today, we are going to be rolling our sleeves up per the usual in Indy for day one. Should be adventurous and entertaining. So we'll be there next Wednesday and Thursday. In hour two, our favorite Husker offensive lineman and NFLer Jeremiah Sirles. Sirles will talk all things pigskin with us and get his take on Kirk Cousins with the quarterback Netflix series. Jock Doc rounds us out with Dr. Brandon Seifert. Guys, let's get in. Our old dear friend Mike Schaefer threw out a good question about touchdowns. Who's going to be the touchdown leader? I want to break it down from that and not pick one, but I want to get into what will represent a good number. X number of touchdowns equals what for the Nebraska offense in 2023? So what's a good room number for the running backs? What's a good room number for the tight ends and wideouts? And what's a good room number for Jeff Sims? So I want to start with Sims, okay? So the range to me, passing touchdown-wise, is between 20 and 30, okay? Give me 2 a game, 2.5 a game. That's my average, 12 games a year, presumably. That's how it's supposed to go at Nebraska, minimum of 12. And you get 24 touchdown passes. I think he can do that. I think he can absolutely do that based on an injury-free season and help from the running game, help with the wideouts, help from the offensive line, and I think he can do some big-time things. Let's talk rushing because he's the dual threat guy. You saw him in the spring game make some nice moves inside the 10 to the 5 touchdown, and he's pretty strong to break some tackles. You had Casey last year get 6 rushing touchdowns. And he's not a runner. Not that he couldn't, but it was more of a change-up call, right, on that zone read keep around left edge, and he got into the end zone 6 times. I think you're going to look at Sims being a guy that can get you in the double-digit number of touchdowns, right? Anywhere between 10 and 12. You look at some of the great years where Crouch's Heisman year, he had 19 rushing touchdowns. I think Frosty had 17 one year. And I don't have off the top of my head what Gill or Tommy Frazier would do, but I think even Tommy's Heisman runner-up season, was probably in that 15 to 20, just because you could, but you still, it's weird. You still had Lawrence, you still had Amon. I mean, you had running backs that would take it in. So they were a little lower than they could have been, as great a player as he was. So to me, if Sims can get you about 12 rushing touchdowns and give me 25 passing touchdowns and have that 2-to-1 interception touchdown ratio, minimal fumbles. I know I'm asking for the world here, but that to me, if you're sitting right around mid-30s, close to 40 total touchdowns, I think that equals a hell of a bowl season, a good bowl, perhaps, and you're in contention in November in the West. And you can clean up against some of the non-cons and have a Al Bundy 5 touchdowns in one game, one game type setup. But overall, I mean, he's going to need to be big in some of these big games, and he'll need the help too. We'll get to backs, we'll get to receivers in a moment. But from a quarterback standpoint, is that asking too much? Give me 38 touchdowns, Jeff Sims.
Yeah, I think that's asking just a little bit much. Just a little bit.
You think 30 is fair?
I think 30 is fair because I look at it
rushing and passing.
Because I look
rushing
at
and passing combined.
For a college quarterback, especially of Jeff Sims, who is going to be using his legs a lot, I would assume also down in the red zone, I think he might be inflating his passing touchdown number just a little bit. I think a solid, healthy number for Sims passing touchdowns on the year is between 20 and 25.
Okay.
That's my number because that is roughly 2-to-1 touchdowns to interceptions, 2 touchdowns a game, 1 interception per game. That's a healthy number for a college quarterback. I'm not going to be upset about the turnovers. If his season stats are 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions,
you may not be.
I think Husker fans look at that and you say, you know what, that's a respectable quarterback performance. It's enough to win you football games if your quarterback is getting you 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in a year.
When are they happening and at what game?
That's a great point.
5 against NIU, 5 against Louisiana Tech.
You bring up interceptions against NIU and people start coding, okay? Because I mean, a couple of those were
not a good
returned for
history.
touchdowns.
Yeah.
Connor Clark off the top rope with the
everybody.
Illinois history.
Sorry, everybody. I mean, I could give you a couple of. I'm more on Elijah's side about 38 might be a little
combined
aggressive. Well, I know combined, but I think the at least number.
Give me 38 passing touchdowns, damn it.
I wish. You need at least. I think you need at least 20 through the air, and I'd like to see at least 7 on the ground. I think
that is super conservative.
That's about where I'm at too.
But at the same time, I would like to be aggressive, but I don't know how aggressive I can be. Now, obviously, I would love a 38 touchdown season from Jeff Sims, but I think at least 20 and at least 7. And then, again, like even then, like Casey Thompson was 17 touchdowns to 10 interceptions last year. So if you could get over that 20 mark, and the team as a total, and I know we'll get there in a second, scored 35. Like that doesn't seem
That's
like
tiny.
very many,
that is
right?
Tiny.
I know. So I think at least 20 through the air and at least 7 on the ground for Sims. I think he could surpass 7 on the ground for sure. But I think 20 at least, probably 20 to 23.
How many games, guys, is he going to have where he throws for 2 and runs for 2? And there's 4 there.
That's a great question, but I go back to Tommy and his career at Nebraska, Tommy Armstrong. I think it's a decent comparison. They're obviously not the same player, but what they're going to be asked to do within this offense, I think is probably going to be pretty similar. Yeah. And I look back at Tommy, his best year, you could argue, was his sophomore season in terms of his touchdown to interception rate, and as well as the
2014.
Yeah, 2014, where he had 22 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, pretty close to that 2-to-1 ratio. And then you go look, he had 6 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown.
Against Northwestern.
Yes, he did. So that comes out to a total of 29 on the season, 22 on the air. We'll call it 7 on the ground, even though 1's receiving. That's kind of an outlier. But that's 29 total touchdowns. And that is probably what I'd expect from Jeff Sims, because once you get down in the red zone, the threat of the quarterback run should be great, and probably greater than it actually is, because you have a guy in Gabe Ervin that's going to be a sledgehammer for you down in the red zone. I think I'd feel more comfortable with the ball being in Gabe Ervin's hand, and then every once in a while, Jeff Sims is going to pull it, the end's going to crash down because he wants to make a play on the 5, and Sims pretty much walks into the end zone. That's how I see it going. You have the occasional one he busts for 40, 50 yards, but I don't think anything over 10 on the ground is going to be realistic, because we're talking one a game, that's a lot of rushing touchdowns for your quarterback, no matter how much you use him, just because of how condensed things get in the red zone. I trust the ball more in the hands of a 240-pound running back in Gabe Ervin.
Well, and at the same time, too, I'm basing my numbers off of what I think Nebraska's going to do this year, and that's 6-6, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm basing my numbers off. Now, if I think Nebraska's going to go 9-3, I'm more so leaning Schmidt's way. But with that in mind, that record prediction as of July 19th is the day. I'm thinking 6-6 is my baseline right now, so that's where I'm getting my numbers from.
The other part of this too is, as you have talked, both of you have talked some sense into me about my aggressiveness. the defenses are no joke in the West. Mm-hmm. Iowa's a top 5 defense. Illinois has been a top. They've
roughed you up the past couple of years.
They are the top defense. Now, a lot of that's in training camp right now in the NFL. You still have Minnesota that isn't no joke. Don't know where Northwestern's going to be. Purdue with their new coach. He was the co-architect of that defense for Illinois. And then there's Wisconsin with 18 starters back. And Luke Fickell knows how to coach and play defense, and Whiskey's always been pretty good with their defense. So,
well, it kind of brings up the point of how many points per game is it going to take in the West this year, because
30 is your number, dude.
30 is your number. I look at,
and that's hard to do against these defenses, but 30 is 30 gets you past the finish line. You win games if you score 30.
I was going to say 30 as a whole in the Big Ten, but with the Big Ten West, what it looks like, obviously we haven't seen some of the offenses. Iowa's probably going to take a step forward. Unsure what we're going to get from Minnesota. Unsure what we're going to get from Wisconsin. A lot of question marks in the Big Ten West. I look at a number of 28. Just because it's nice and rounded, it makes our math easier.
4 TDs.
You have 4 touchdowns you can work with in any given game, and more likely it's going to be 3 with some field goals.
And that's still 6 more points than they averaged last year.
It is.
They're what, 22
and change. 22
Dude,
and change.
They've been so pedestrian offensively post Tim Beck.
I mean, but you just look at that, 4 touchdowns a game. If 3 are going to your quarterback, 1 to a running back, there's not going to be a whole bunch of touchdowns to go around, especially once Big Ten play starts really ramping up. I don't know. I think it's smarter to take the conservative approach now, and if we're wrong, it's better to be wrong conservatively.
Let's set an over-under by the end of the show on Jeff Sims' total touchdowns.
I like that.
Then we can buy in. Running back touchdowns. You're leading back, and I don't know how this is going to break down. I would like to see Nebraska find a dude, go with a dude versus the committee, but they have role and options for a lot of guys. I mean, Ervin isn't just going to be your short yardage guy. Ervin he can play every down and do what he needs to. Anthony Grant, let's be honest. I mean, he has a lot of juice. He can hit a home run if he buys in, and I think he has, based on what Barthel said in the interview, that he'll get what he's supposed to be doing now versus seeing the ghosts and worry about the offensive line actually making the block. It's about patience and vision for him. We know he's physical, and we know that Anthony Grant can get into that extra gear. Then there's Ramir Johnson. I mean, Ramir, when he's used, is probably as good of a between the tackles back as Nebraska has that we've seen.
In terms of willingness.
Well, he's willing, but he also, I know he didn't have the size, but he has
crafty.
The heart. I mean, he will deliver a hit, and he surprises you with that. And then we know what he can do as a receiver. So in a perfect world, you can have 450 yards in rushing numbers from Ramir, and then put 350 to 500, depending on how many wheel routes are called, with Ramir in some matchups they like. I mean, he could maybe combine for 1,000. And I know I'm, again, aggressive here. I think Grant was close to a G last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, just missed out. He could get a G this year. And then Ervin, maybe he's, if he wins the job, you need a 1,000-yard rusher. You have not had that since Ziggy in 2018. And you're a far cry from what you've had with Roy, with Rex, and with Amir. And I don't know if you've got one of those dudes, a Rex-like, an Amir-like, or a Roy-like back in this running backs room, but I think you got a guy that could be as good as Ozigbo was. I mean, I think you have some options and some talent, but give me 22, 25 total rushing touchdowns this season.
Well, here's an interesting thing, too, and I just have the numbers from last year pulled up for me, and It was split directly down the middle between rushing and receiving, 17 apiece. So you said, what's your number on the ground?
25.
25. So say they do have 25. What's your number comparison-wise? So do you want to see more on the ground or do you want to see more through the air?
I just think it doesn't matter. I think what you can do through the air is bait teams off play action, hit a big play that way, and get set up to score with a short 5 to 10 yard, red zone setup after a big play on offense.
See, I see it as ideally you probably want 2 rushing touchdowns a game.
Yeah.
And we gave 6 to Sims, so that leaves 18 for the running backs. That seems like a fair number to ask. You're getting a touchdown and a half a game from your running backs. And from a yardage point of view, I look at in an ideal world, 1 back with 1,000, 1 back with 500, 1 back with 250. That comes out to 1,750 yards, which is about...
Give me $2,000, around 2, close to 2 as a room.
Yeah, well, if you throw in the quarterback and Jeff Sims, I want $2,000 on the ground total on the year. That's going to be a successful season. Give Jeff Sims 250 to 500 rushing yards, which leaves about 150 yards per game from your running backs. That's a successful offense. If you're getting that.
If you're getting 2 bills on the ground... That's a win. You rush for 200.
It's gotta be, yeah.
Rush for 2, throw for 2, 400 yards of offense. That's a winning formula in the Big Ten West with the defenses that are currently in the division.
Right, and the way offenses have been, 400 used to be the benchmark. Now it feels like teams are putting up 550. But yeah, if you have 400 yards total offense, 200 on the ground, that could be big. Mike Babcock's on the way. It's Hail Varsity Radio.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, as Jeremiah Sirles coming up here. Less than an hour. We say hi to Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer with Hail Varsity. Babbers, good to spend time. Thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, my pleasure listening. Especially enjoy listening to the discussion of scoring explosion too. I think it's pretty impressive.
Someone's going to hear me throwing out 38 total touchdowns and just either roll their eyes or say, good number. I mean, it's going to be one or the other. Mike, you know this. What say you on expectations and reality here with quarterback play, running backs? We haven't got to wideouts or tight ends, but what is, air quote, good to you with totals? Not only just rushing, but touchdown numbers for a running back room. Let's get your input.
Well, first off, some of the names I would be talking about are Prohaska, Benhart, Corcoran, Piper, Noelle, Scott. I mean, I think that's where that's going to help define what that offense looks like, obviously, and I always say that, but I think that the conservative side for Sims makes me more comfortable. So passing touchdowns, if he gets to 20 or 21, 22, somewhere in there, I think that's pretty good. The more important thing, I think, is keep the interceptions to a minimum, and maybe not 2 to 1 in a game. Maybe under 1 on average for the interceptions. Take care of the ball. Don't fumble the ball. And I do think that the best case scenario probably at running back is to have somebody step up and take the load. But because of the talent that's in that room, as you point out, you want to take advantage of those guys. And so I don't know if it's just going to be Gabe Irvin, if it's just going to be Anthony Grant. Ramir gets overlooked, I think, a lot of times when people discuss that at running back. But if you can get a couple of touchdowns a game from those running backs, and you can average 400 yards plus a game on offense, the offensive line's probably doing the job, and you're probably in a position where you can be successful if you can keep the interceptions down and you can take care of the ball. Those are the important things for me, almost as much as the numbers in terms of rushing or touchdowns.
Mike, in terms of rushing numbers, there's 2 numbers I want to get from you here. One is, what would be an ideal total in terms of rushing yards per game? if Nebraska does this, they're going to be in contention to win the Big Ten West, or at least be in a spot in late November where they're playing for maybe a spot in Indy. That's the ideal rushing yards per game number, and obviously there's more to making it to Indy than just rushing yards. But in the Big Ten West, that's a huge number. And then what's a more realistic number in terms of if Nebraska can get this many rushing yards per game, they'll be making a bowl game and they might be making some noise.
Elijah, I can't give you a specific number, but I would say any 200 yards plus rushing is effective, is a good situation to put your offense in. Again, if you're taking care of the ball and you have that passing threat that Sims is going to represent, in addition to his ability to run the ball. So if you can run the ball for over 200 yards in the Big Ten consistently, I think you can be successful because of the way the defenses play. So anything over 200 yards a game, I think that's pretty good in the Big Ten.
Mike Babcock is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And, Mike, I want to go back to the turnover conversation because I think that's actually a really fascinating point because when you think about it, turnovers are almost, I know you want to put up points on the board, but turning the ball over and taking care of it are almost equally as important. So what's that number for you? Say, let's start with interceptions. You want to keep it under 1 per game. What's your kind of dream number for this team to have interceptions-wise this year and taking care of the ball?
Connor, I'd like to see it under 10. 6 or 7 interceptions, that's pretty strict thing that I'm asking for from the quarterback, but I think that's the kind of thing that you want to do is be in that position where you're the number of touchdowns to me is almost less important than the number of interceptions. If you can keep those interceptions low, the number of touchdown passes that you have is not as big of an issue. I can get around 20 touchdown passes, throw 6 or 7 interceptions. I think that's a winning formula. I think that you can be very successful that way. Again, if you're taking care of the ball running it, and you're not fumbling it away.
Mike Babcock's with us here from Hail Varsity at MD Babs. Follow him on Twitter. We're throwing out some numbers here, and those numbers could equate a breakthrough season, a good first season, or that transition first season based on turnovers, rushing yards, what you average there, and just what kind of offense and production Nebraska can get. Mike, it feels like that Nebraska is going to be run first, but they'll be able to be balanced with throwing the football. I think there'll be some play action. You'll have the mobile quarterback threat. And what we do know is a guy like Xavier Betts is back on the team. You're waiting for a guy like Thomas Fedoni to stay healthy and really flash. Washington is impressive and probably a little underused compared to his stature coming in from Texas. And those are 3 names. And of course, you've got Kemp coming in that was all sorts of talented from Virginia in that slot and kind of the possession / plus guy. What's we haven't dove in ourselves, so I want to get your take here. Receiving yards and numbers, what's good for the room when it comes to touchdowns or just yards per catch? Because I know that was a big thing with Nebraska in run-based offenses. It's not necessarily how many times you threw it, but, man, they were very productive with doing so.
Yeah, well, so if you're talking 400 yards a game or 400 plus and 200 of those yards are from passing, 200 plus yards from passing, then what? How does that figure out? How the quarterback is going to complete how many passes? You're going to average probably 8 or 9 or 10 yards a game on the pass, and then you're going to have some big plays that are going to bring that average up to that total, and you certainly have the guys to do it. I think that's as important as. Can Sims get the job done throwing touchdown passes? Yeah, does he have the receivers that can get the job done? And where does the running game fit in? It's important. If you can establish a run immediately, and the defense is thinking like, hey, we've got to stop this run, then that opens up that passing game and gives you the opportunity to utilize these guys. So I think the pieces are there. Again, if you take care of the ball, you don't throw the interceptions, you don't fumble the ball away, you establish the run early that you can do it, that opens up all kinds of things with a quarterback that is a dual threat. So the pieces are there. What is that average? 10 yards a reception? That's a lot of yardage on average, I think, if you're looking at throwing, I don't know how many passes a game and what kind of a completion percentage, because you want a high completion percentage, right? I mean, you don't want to throw a lot of interceptions, and more now it gets to the point where somebody that throws in the low 50% percentile, that's not all that good. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a better percentage there. So you complete the passes. What does that figure out to on average? And I don't have a good answer for that. Obviously, I'm speaking around it.
You figure 18 out of 25, right? 25 pass attempts. You get anything over 25, you're playing from behind, or if it's chuck and duck time where you're throwing it, in the Riley era. I know that was the primary focus of their offense, was to pass first, but it just depends how the game goes. I mean, can you control it where you throw where you want to versus throwing because you have to and you're down 2 scores?
So, and then if you complete 18 out of 25, then you're averaging a little bit over 10 yards of a completion, right?
That'd be good.
Get into the 200 range.
This is a good wish list we're putting together.
Yeah. It's just translate this into action on the field, and we've settled a lot of things.
We could be the football coaching staff, honestly.
Yeah, right?
Coach Rule's going to figure out a way to get us involved in this thing, because we've got it so figured out that it's just it's remarkable in a very short period of time.
These are what these turkeys think we need to do.
We're just walking in the locker room.
Listeners fast.
It's very simple, Jeff. All you need is 38 touchdowns this year. We'll be fine. Just go out and do it.
We'll get you a second John Deere. Just do it.
Hope he's watching the show here so he can be taking notes so he knows what it is he needs to do.
We'll just bring it up Thursday. What do you think of this segment, Jeff? 38. Too much to ask? Stay healthy?
Yeah, you can interject it into a question. And then that way he'll know. And
he's going to walk on by the old media table, I think.
It's the crazy man that wants me to put up 38 next year.
I just suggested. Mike, real quick before we say goodbye, about 90 seconds, but Taylor Martinez into the Hall of Fame. We spent some time on him yesterday, but really high-level talent and was close to getting Nebraska to that BCS New Year's Day Bowl.
Yeah, you don't nickname somebody T-Magic because he doesn't get the job done. I mean, that's the bottom line there. Certainly one of the best quarterbacks that Nebraska's had, and in the time, in this era, the time frame that he played, he certainly was as good as it gets. But yeah, you got to be pretty good to get the nickname T-Magic.
Mike, what's coming up from you, bud, this week?
I'm trying to think about some stuff that I'm doing for the next issue of the magazine.
Okay.
As always, I'm, grasping in my head for ideas.
Sure. No, that's all good. Mike Babcock with us at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, appreciate you as always, man. Good chat. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is. Mike Babcock joins us, and he's in that football office. Love catching up with Babbers. Bless his heart, because he'll pop on and hang through that first segment. Always. We'll get into some more thoughts on Nebraska's offense. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We'll get to some of your comments here in the stream in just a moment. Matt chimes in. while we're asking for all these touchdowns and yards, what's good for turnover margin, +2 or 3 a game? Why not? Huh? +2 in turnovers? Or how about even being even?
Upon some further discussion here, I have come to a reasonable conclusion on most of these, and I think a good turnover margin is anything positive on the season. If you're positive on the season, that's a win. We haven't seen that in way too long.
2010.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. If you're positive on the season, it's a good turnover margin. How many points per game does Nebraska need next year?
28.
I would say
more
probably
than 22.
One more than the defense is giving up. Then you're gravy. If your offense is putting up 28 a game, your defense is allowing 27, that's a win in my book.
The scoring margin, you realize, in 2021, I mean, you probably were plus and still were 3-9.
Wasn't it? In conference play, it was flat even, and then you're positive overall.
Yeah, you were positive overall.
But let's also make things clear. I don't want to call that season fluky because
it was hell.
I think there were some institutional problems within the program that forced you to lose so many one-score games. But the fact that you did have
issues,
8 one-score losses and the other one was a 9-point loss, the fact that that's the stat shows me that, like, hey, Nebraska was good enough with a positive scoring margin to go make a bowl game at least and win some football games. So that's what I'll say. It's very reasonable. It's down the middle. If the offense can score more points than the defense in 2023, I think they'll be great. If the offense turns the ball over less times than the defense gets turnovers, that's great. That's a win. How many rushing yards does Nebraska need? Damn, more than the opponent, that's for sure.
Yep, 200 a game. But here's the thing. You're not going to very often, unless you get some, dare I say, big plays, some explosive plays from your quarterback, as that wild card because of what the mobile quarterback does to a defense, and that stress them. Mm-hmm. So are you going to be able to go off on the Illinois, the Minnesotas, the Iowas, 3 teams I just named that have been top 15 total defense the last 3 years? Memory serves. You got Michigan thrown in there. They're going to be crazy good defensively again. So, yeah, you're going to need some off-script improv / he's a great athlete at quarterback, and he may not run for 100, but he could pop you for 45. I mean, think of the stuff Adrian or Taylor did, for that matter, with their legs that really screwed with some incredible defenses. I mean, Joey Bosa and those Buckeye teams, they weren't used to getting hammered like that. Now, their offense would way outscore what you were putting up on offense. But, man, the defense played probably their worst statistical game against some of those mobile quarterbacks Nebraska had.
And one interesting topic of discussion here is along with Jeff Sims and the legs, and I think you could extend it to the entire rushing game, is how many explosive plays do you get on the ground this season? Because that seems to be firmly lacking since, Juan Dale left, and even then Juan Dale wasn't a guy who was consistently getting explosive plays. You might have to go back as far as Zigbo as being the last running back who could consistently get you explosive plays on the ground.
He had a lot. He had so many that year. I mean, and he had a season's worth against Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But he was so good, so underrated. He was kind of buried on the depth chart, and then he just kept fighting and became the guy.
And as we've been watching all these highlights of Taylor Martinez really taking it to Kansas State on a Thursday night, that's one thing that struck me is, man, how long has it been since Nebraska had an 80-yard rushing touchdown?
Think of that.
How long has it been since Nebraska had a 50-yard rushing touchdown?
That stat, right, where it's
2021.
75,
rushing,
it's 80, it's another 75. I mean, you had Wisconsin running back type yards per carry averages.
Well, how do you balance two explosive play with the amount of time you have the ball, right? Because that's an issue that we've been experiencing for the past handful of years, right? And this is interesting too because Nebraska time of possession, 26 minutes, 48 seconds. And then I wanted to compare it to another team in the West, so might as well compare it to the best in the West last year in Purdue, and they had it for 31 minutes and 58 seconds. So what's kind of that ideal time for you? Obviously, you don't want another Purdue situation where you're on the field for 17 minutes of the game, right? Well, so what's that kind of number for this type of success?
To bring it back to how we started this segment, more time than the other team has it for. That's a win.
Just have the
over
advantage.
30.
Just have the advantage, says Elijah.
I think that's fair over 30.
Over 30.
Over 30.
But
Again,
if you lose it because you're getting a whole bunch of explosive rushes, if you're turning these explosive plays into touchdowns, I think you'll sacrifice the time of possession if you say, hey, it turns out we only had the ball for 18 seconds that drive because on 1st and 10 from our own 20, we went 80 yards for a touchdown. I think you go, you know what? Okay, we'll take that.
Well, Moonbot7 chimes in. Thanks for checking in, brother. Sims needs to be Joe Gans 3.0.
To get to 38, maybe.
I love Joe Gans. I half tempted to text Joe and see if he wanted to meet for a beer when we were in Cedar Rapids. Didn't do it, but thought about it.
Realistically, though, that's why I brought up Tommy Armstrong in the first segment. I think if you can get a Tommy Armstrong-esque season from Jeff Sims, I think Husker fans will take it, and I think that's going to lead Nebraska to a bowl game, just with what Tommy could do with his legs. He could do well enough through the air that he could stress a defense. You don't need Jeff Sims to be Heisman candidate Sims. You just need a guy that can run your offense, that is going to consistently be able to put up 24 to 32 points a game, maybe even on the higher end of that if you're not talking against the traditional Big Ten West foes with Iowa and Wisconsin and those teams. But I don't think you need him to be a world beater at the quarterback position. You need him to stress the defense with the legs.
Manage and make an occasional play.
Yes, exactly. Take care of the ball, manage the game in that sense, and then whenever it's needed, 3rd and 7, fourth quarter, you find a way to pick up a first down, whether it's on the ground, whether it's through the air, whatever you do, you find a way to pick up a play whenever your team needs it the most. That's what Nebraska needs from Jeff Sims. They don't need him to be a guy who's putting up 400 yards in the air and 150 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns. That's not what Nebraska needs to win football games. They just need a guy who's going to keep that offense steady, keep that offense driving, and you know what? Whenever they need a play, that's whenever Jeff Sims is going to put on his Superman cape and make it happen.
So in review, I've asked him to do what Adrian Martinez was supposed to do for 3 years here, and that's carry the offense.
Pretty much.
That did not work out well. That did not work out well, although he was a ton of fun to watch. So pretty good. Synopsis, who leads the team in touchdown catches? We'll just end it with that. Are you going tight end? Are you going wide out? I'm going to go with the new guy. I'm going to go with Kemp. You're going to go Betts. You're going to go Washington. You're going to go Fedoni. You're going to go Gilbert.
Washington.
That's a tough question. It really is.
You're going to go Borkacher?
I'm thinking about it.
Are you?
Because I think Fedoni makes more sense from how he's going to stress a defense, but who's going to be the tight end that's going to be left alone whenever you bring 2 tight ends in on a goal line set? Who's going to be the guy that might get forgotten about in the route?
It'd be really cool if there's a 3 tight end set because you got Gilbert, Fedoni, and Borkacher.
Well, we're still awaiting Gilbert's eligibility.
And you got Bonner. You got Bonner at fullback / H-back.
So I think Kemp's a good option because of his shiftiness. He's going to be tough to manage down in the red zone. I don't think it's going to be Betts because I don't think Betts, he's going to have to rely on a lot of deep balls and a lot of big plays to be able to take the lead. So I'm down to Kemp or one of the tight ends. Is that too broad?
No, that's fine.
It's either going to be Fedoni or Borkacher. I don't know who the more reliable red zone threat is going to be between those two.
Well, wind down. Hour 1, Hail Varsity continues, and can always send an email. What's your pick? Chris at HailVarsity.com.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Jeremiah Sirles coming up in 10 minutes. His thoughts on the O-line, the running back room. Kirk Cousins, his singing ability, Sirles' golf game, and tug of war that was played at a recent family reunion. We'll ask Sirles about that. You can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence, for Elijah Herbel, and then Connor Clark. We'll say it slowly, at C_Clark_27.
There are 2 underscores.
Okay, this is good. I like what Fly Too Low says and asks the question. We were talking about props all hour 1. Will our fullback reach 100 yards rushing this season?
I think it's going to be on how you define a fullback. I think that's what's going to be very interesting here. There was a great breakdown from Brett Coleman. I tweeted about it a couple weeks ago about what the NFL is doing with their fullbacks. I think it's a lot more likely that there's some 2-back sets instead of having a true quote-unquote fullback where you have Gabe Irvin and Anthony Grant both playing running back in the backfield. One guy just happens to be the lead blocker. One guy happens to be the guy who gets the ball. that's how I think it's probably going to look the more research I do on just how the NFL has been using the fullback position recently. That if you call it a true fullback, Bonner, no, I don't think he's going to get to 100 rushing yards. I think that's going to be like if you're going I formation on 3rd and short and you hand it to the first guy through, probably not. I think you're probably looking at 1 to 2 yards of rush from that guy, and he just wants to get the first down.
I think you could pop one Makovica style on a little trap.
But if you define your fullback as that second running back, maybe Gabe Irvin's in the backfield and he's going to be the lead blocker for Grant, and then there's the occasional time where it's the other way around. If you define it that way, then maybe. But I don't see Nebraska truly utilizing the fullback the way that the football traditionalist thinks of it, as being a guy who is going to be 260 pounds going through the hole. He's going to block 9 times out of 10. I think there's going to be a little bit of flexibility with that fullback position.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think if things are rolling, I think you could see Bonner or whoever's playing fullback, Spider 2Y banana, baby.
I'm just
right.
telling you.
I mean, just give him the old play action and throw it back to him, check it down. The old Tommy Vardell, Mike Allstott, let him go kill some people in the flat.
Think about this, though, as being an option. You got your shotgun set. You got Gabe Irvin to the left. You got Anthony Grant to the right.
We're going empty on
think
3rd
about
and short.
I'm just saying, it could be second and medium. I'm just saying. You got the shotgun.
Whipple was retained.
Irvin's to the left, Grant's to the right. You're running a zone read with Anthony Grant coming across. You have Gabe Irvin going around the corner. He's your lead blocker. Then Sims can pull it and go the other way if he wants to with no lead blocker. Is Gabe Irvin going to be considered the fullback on a play like that? It's a common play. You see it all across college football, even in the NFL. Do you call Gabe Irvin the fullback on that play, or is he the second running back?
He's a second. It's a two running back set.
And these are kind of the semantics I think we're going to have to get into, where realistically, Gabe Irvin's the lead blocker on that play. He's your fullback, based on how you define the fullback position, but based on our eyes and what we know about football, that's not a fullback.
No, I mean, and it's positionless. I mean, you look at Rule, and he wants guys he'll line up a running back in the slot, right, in a trips formation. Rule's the type of guy to use Jerry Rice as running back in Tecmo, right? That's what he'll do. So, Sirles going to weigh in on this. Stick around for hour 2. We'll do a Jock Doc. Also, Nick Saban weighs in on expectations in Bama at SEC Media Days. Next hour, Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. We say hi to our favorite Husker O-lineman and NFLer, Jeremiah Sirles, at Sirles71_HSKR. Jeremiah, good to see you again, man. How's your summer?
It's good, man. It's flying by, as we all know all too well. Summer just goes by in the blink of an eye, but it's been really good. I've been loving this weather. It hasn't been a million degrees outside, so it's been nice to get out and run around and chase the kids. And I feel like I have a golf tournament every other week, but it's been fun to be able to get out and swing the sticks a little bit, too.
I'm going to get into the golf in a moment, but how much Billy Madison did you invoke when you were playing tug of war the other day?
Oh, my goodness, dude. I got absolutely crushed.
What?
By tug of war?
Yeah. Tug of war with the little ones.
Oh, they killed me. They murdered me, dude. Are you kidding me? They murdered me. There was 15 of them, dude.
Set it up here, Kramer.
All right. So we had a family reunion over the 4th of July in Colorado. My aunt's like, hey, all the little cousins think it'd be really cool to do a tug of war against a former NFL player. I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll be a sport. Well, what I didn't realize is that they also meant the cousins that are 15 years old, 12 years old, and 11 years old. So just those 3 alone, I'm pulling 200 some odd pounds, right? And so I was like, I'll be a good sport. I'll do it. And so like my initial idea, right? So I'm building up in my head. First of all, I had to get warmed up because like I'll hurt myself if I don't. So I'm doing like high knee stretching in the corner, right? So we go out there. And so my initial thing is like, okay, if I can just try and do a quick yank, like right off the rip, try and get him off balance, right? I look across the way. Who do they have in the front? My little girl, Aylin, 2 years old. The other little cousin that's like 2 years old. The other one that's like a year and a half. And so in my mind, I'm like, if I pull these little people over and they just trample over these little people, like I'm going to be the one that ruined the family reunion. So I was like, maybe I'll just try and withhold for a second and then I'll pull. Nope. I got dragged, not pulled, dragged across the ground. It was not an ideal time. And like as I'm pulling, I started getting my feet under me, started pulling a little bit, and I felt every muscle in my body start going. I was like, I'm not ripping or tearing anything. You guys win.
Wow. Okay. The initial advertisement just showed the little people. I didn't know you had the teens.
Yeah, the teens were in there.
All right. Well, that's not as bad.
You take out the teens, I think I could do it.
And here's
so.
the thing. Here's the thing. There's always that question going around, the would you rather fight? And I saw one that had me intrigued. Do you think you'd stand a better chance against 55-year-olds or 10-10-year-olds?
10-10-year-olds. Dude, 55-year-olds? 50
But they're
is so
five.
many.
Do you know how many you could get with like one kick?
Dude, okay, say the average. So my 4-year-old weighs 40 pounds, right? So say a 5-year-old weighs 50 pounds. I'm not great at math, but 5 times 50 is a lot of weight. It's a lot of weight just to pull in general, let alone you keep their little feet, little friction against the ground. No chance.
They're screaming. They're screaming at the family reunion.
I feel like there's the fear factor, though. If one Sirles gets one good shot in a 5-year-old, a whole bunch of other 5-year-olds scatter.
I'm not kicking them in the teeth, Elijah. I'm
It's a fight.
tug-of-warring.
Did you give him dirty looks? I mean, did you shoot one across the rope?
No, I didn't. I let it be. Are you talking about a fight or tug of war?
Tug of war. Did you try and intimidate?
No, I didn't. I was being nice.
Okay. How'd you shoot last weekend, Tyson's Treasure Chest golf outing?
It was great. You know, our team, we took third somehow, even though we shot a 43. So it was a good day. It was a lot of fun. We raised $29,000.
That's awesome.
$30,000 for pediatric brain cancer research. So fantastic weekend. 10th anniversary went off with a bang. Super excited. Everyone came out. We sold out this year via sponsorships, which was fantastic. First year we've ever done that. So just excited to keep growing on that, keep building. We got the bowling event coming up in February. So we'll have our second annual bowling event. So that'll be super fun. And we'll just keep finding ways to raise money.
Man, that's awesome and good work. Who was on your team? Or did you carry everybody?
No, I was the weak link by far. We had Sam Tavis, who was the absolute hammer, who could hit the ball 350. Spencer Edwards of the pride of all Hausman Construction. And then the pride and joy Nebraska, Cody Green.
Okay. Good work with Cody. Yeah. He's got that lethal putter.
I got some rotational athletes in there. Baseball player and Sam, quarterback and Cody. Those guys seem to hit the ball a lot further than us linemen.
Sirles, there was a picture going around the internet probably about a week ago from a golf scramble at a local tournament, and one team came in with a score 24 under par. Do you buy it in a scramble if you get some good golfers together?
It depends if you have cheats or not. If you have cheats, yes. I mean, like I said, we shot a 43 through 18 holes. So, like, if you have the cheats and the mulligans and the string and all that stuff, then yes. But if it's just straight up, no, I don't buy it.
Sirles, a couple of your teammates, part of the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame class for 2024. Taylor Martinez, your dear friend Spencer Long, and comment on both of those guys.
Yeah, couldn't be more excited for both those guys. You know, I mean, I think Taylor gets kind of overlooked sometimes of the success that he really did have here at Nebraska. I mean, he shattered pretty much every record, and then Adrian obviously came in and beat a lot of those. But he was such a special player. He was really kind of that first dual threat quarterback that could throw it and run it and do both super effectively in this era. You know, so super excited for him. And then obviously Spencer Long coming from being a walk-on defensive lineman, moving over to the offensive side of the ball, becoming an All-American, All-Big Tenor, probably would have been a first team, would have been probably even a higher draft pick, so he didn't get hurt his senior year. So both those guys extremely well-deserving. Couldn't be happier for both those guys.
First time you met Taylor and your impression?
Hey guys, how's it going? I mean, I thought he had marbles in his mouth the first time I met him. But you know, overall, I thought that him and I actually, our first times interact is pretty funny. He came up to me when we were freshmen. Both of us were redshirting. He was like, "Hey man, I got an extra ticket to the Tim McGraw concert tonight. You want to go?" And him and I in his Chrysler 300 drove down to Omaha. We got pulled over because he drives like he's from California. And we got pulled over and ended up getting out of the ticket. But that was just a super fun night to get to bond with him. And I mean, he's such an interesting character, super quiet, little bit eccentric, but man, he was fast and electric with the football in his hand.
So he takes you to a concert. That's all good and well. Was he just smoking dudes on scout team? Because I know he was offensive MVP, but he made that jump from wide out to quarterback. Were you thinking he was going to be the guy as a redshirt freshman? Or because you had, Cody was in the mix, and you also had Zach, who was kind of the incumbent. I know he was coming off surgery.
Yeah, coming through spring ball, you could tell it was he was figuring it out, but training camp, he really pulled himself away. Like, I can remember Coach Cotton in a meeting when Taylor pulled the ball and took off, and he got a pause, and he's like, are you guys starting to see that 3's going to be the guy? Like, you seeing this? And all of us were like, yeah. Like, we can see he's running at a different speed. He's moving at a different level. Like, guys can't catch him. Like, it was about halfway through training camp in 2010, I think it was, where you really started to see him separate himself from the pack.
Sirles, tell us quickly about Taylor Martinez, the competitor, because I think a lot of Husker fans saw this outside persona of, man, it was a guy that was great for the Husker football team, but there was always these little mistakes that Husker fans would bemoan. But then you'd get Taylor up in front of the media. He's always well-spoken, always a clean-cut guy. Tell us like that behind the scenes, because to be that good, you have to have a competitive streak too. And I want to hear about Taylor Martinez, the competitor, what kind of chip on his shoulder he had every single day.
Yeah, he was a guy that just came to work every single day. He wasn't a super vocal leader, and he knew that. And he played to his strength was, I'm just going to be my leader through my actions, right? Mm-hmm. He showed up, he worked his tail off, he was in the meeting room, he was studying, and he ran the offense very effectively. And he'd be the first one to step up and be like, that was a bad mistake, or that was something I needed to fix. But he also wasn't afraid to be like, hey, guys, we got to play better. We got to get going. And when you knew when Taylor became vocal, that's when you knew it was time to really step up. You're like, okay, this means a lot to Taylor when he's actually, because it wasn't comfortable for him. So just to be around him, and when he got hurt, man, that senior year, I hate living in the what ifs, but what could have been that senior year if all of us could have stayed healthy, Taylor, Spencer, myself, Quali, all the way down the line, I think it could have been really special. Tell us about Spencer Long, the competitor. Any good fights at practice that you two got into? Him and I have been best friends forever. He lived in my basement pretty much his entire NFL career, and so him and I, honestly, the biggest competitive thing that him and I would get into it over was after our rookie year, we'd live together in the Lincoln building downtown, and we would stay up to like 2 or 3 in the morning playing Smash Bros. And him and I would eventually go to bed not speaking at each other because we were so angry with one another. Usually me more than him because he beat me so often, but we competed in everything, and it was part of why we worked out together. Right, we'd come back to Nebraska, we'd work together because we'd push each other in the offseason. We'd push each other to be better. We'd be talking about football just down here on the couch as we're watching TV, talking about plays, talking about things that happened during the season, And he was just such a cerebral player. His ability to play guard and center, really helped him in the league, and he became a starting guard and center in the league, multi-position starter, got himself paid in a couple different teams, and, had a great career. And now he's living in Utah, raising a couple kids, and just living the dream.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Sirles, want to get into this fall camp that's just around the corner, Media Days in Indy next week. And from your perspective, I look at some of the backs you played with, and Elijah and I talk a lot about your era and your offensive line, just the group you had, and it was really a really good group, and you had backs, you had Roy, you had Rex, you had Amir. And tell me about that partnership, how you guys did your job, you had a really talented back behind you, and how much better that makes things go on offense. I know it's kind of an obvious question, but the reason I'm asking that is because of the question mark on Nebraska's offensive line, and then the backs that are still out there, and you've seen some flashes from some of the backs that are returning for Nebraska this year, but you just don't know. You have 2 potential question marks going into 2023.
Yeah, as an offensive lineman, whenever you have a back there that can take it the distance at any moment, right, that's got the speed, that's got the vision, you do want to button yourself up a little bit more in the blocking schemes, right? Because if I can just make sure my landmarks are correct and I can get my head across and have my backside hand and stay attached to this guy, and that back can cut off me, this could be a touchdown. This could be a 40-yard explosive play. This could be a game-changing play. And when you have a back there that trusts, and you develop this trust with him throughout spring ball, throughout training camp, that he gets used to how you guys run plays. He gets used to what his play is with you, right? So if you're an outside zone team, we ran a ton of zone read, right? So we knew, and Rex and Amir and Roy knew what our landmarks were and how we were doing it because we practiced it over and over, that we trusted, like, hey, if we get this blocked, Roy's going to make the right hole hit. He's going to put his foot in the ground and get in the back. Or, hey, if we can feel this DN crashing down, I know Taylor's going to pull this and get around, right? It was one of those you just felt what was going to happen because you had drilled it with each other so much that you had this trust factor. Right, I think this offensive line's played enough games together. They have this trust factor, but Gabe Irvin's still getting back in the mix. Grant's still getting back in the mix. Like, you have to develop that trust and that feel of knowing where the ball is going to be on every play, hitting the hole the right way, because it's all a timing. Run game's such a timing thing, right? If you have to hold on to your block for half a second longer, that can really mess things up. Or if that back's dancing in the hole instead of getting past the line of scrimmage before he makes his first cut, then it throws the timing off of everything. And that just comes with reps. It just comes with practice. And that's something that they're just going to have to also figure out. What are we as a running football team? What's our bread and butter? Are we an inside zone? Are we an outside zone? Are we a counter team? Are we a power team? Like, you have to figure out what are we, what's our identity as a run game, and then just hammer it over and over and over and over again until it just becomes natural for both offensive line and the backs.
Sirles, there's three very different backs in that Husker backfield that are probably going to be competing for playing time. Ramir Johnson, more of a scat back. You have Gabe Irvin, who's more of the hammer, and then Anthony Grant, somewhere in between. He'll put his shoulder down, but he's also got probably the most make you miss of any of those three backs. And from an offensive lineman's point of view, maybe this is just a personal question. I'm not sure if it's all over the board, but is there a preferred type of running back that you liked blocking for, or maybe running backs like blocking for more, like a guy that wants to put his shoulder down, or is it a guy that wants to, break it outside and he can take it 80 yards and make your life easy, get you to the sideline quickly?
I always appreciated the guy that he was going to hit the hole and fall for 3 instead of try and bounce it and make it 80. I think as an offensive lineman, you want those guys that are like, okay, there's really nothing here. I'm going to put my foot in the ground and go where the ball is supposed to be, right? If it's an A-gap run, I'm going to bury it in the A-gap and maybe bounce it to the B-gap. But nothing would drive me crazy as an offensive lineman when you're running like a true inside duo, double team, A-gap, B-gap run, and all of a sudden your back's bouncing it outside and he's getting tackled by the corner for a 2-yard loss, who's the unblocked player. Right, so for me, I always loved the back that you trusted to know he's going to just grind. He's going to push it up in there. He's going to punch it. 2 is going to turn into 4. 4 is going to turn into 6. And then 6 is going to turn into the 20s, the 25s. I'd take that guy that's maybe less fast, maybe not as elusive, but he's just going to stick with you and grind it out throughout the entire game than the guy that's always trying to get the home run hit, like a Marcus Washington type of player a few years ago.
Give me a thought on Grant, because Grant started out the year with some 100-yard games and then really tried to do a lot on his own and bounce it. And sometimes there wasn't anything there. Sometimes it was lack of patience. And it was out of wanting to help the team. Mm-hmm. I think he wanted to get something going in the run game. And now he's learning the blocking schemes, it sounds like, from Coach Barthel. And they're really working on where the run game's supposed to go, the whole per se with the designed run game. So I'm asking you, what do you think Grant can be? Like, what's his ceiling? Because I think he's uber talented. We know he's physical, but he's got that home run ability.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for him is understanding the concept on a whole level. Right, like when you become a guy that you just want to try and make something happen and be the guy that flips the switch, like sometimes you can lose focus on, hey, what is the concept of this play? Like, are we running this play right now to set up 4 plays from now of, hey, we're going to run this and see what this safety is doing or see what this corner is doing. And if he's cheating, if he's up in the box, then we're going to come back to a different play. Versus if you try and be like, oh, man, I got to bounce this, and then you bounce it, then you're not really giving a clean look at it. Right? You're not getting a clean look at what that play is supposed to look like. So I think for him, just understanding conceptually why we're doing things, what's the purpose of this play, where's the unblocked player, where's my leverage, where's my landmark, all those things. If he can start figuring all that stuff out, the home run plays just happen. Yeah. Right? The great backs don't force the home run plays. The great backs make the home run plays happening because they trust the blocking scheme. I was just breaking down tape with John Michael with Saquon. So much of his Saquon's big rush ability is he's staying patient. It's a trap play. It doesn't look like it's there, and all of a sudden it clears, and he puts his foot in the ground and goes, and that's a big 40-yard play. Like, he just needs to stay patient with all that, and I think that the home run plays will continue to come.
Have you been working the film with John Michael on Matt Breida as well? Because we're not quite sure if Saquon's going to be there this fall.
I sure hope Saquon's going to be there this fall. He is so fun to watch, man. Holy cow. Breaking down film of what that guy can do is so special. But, as much as it is, the running back position is not a valued position in the NFL right now, and I feel for those running backs. I mean, the fact that Bijan Robinson is the highest paid running back in the NFL next season is a crazy statistic to think about. But it's just the nature of what the NFL does. They're just devaluing that position over and over again.
What is the right answer moving forward for running backs? I ask that because if you're drafted in the first round, and there's fewer running backs that are drafted in the first round, but still, probably a handful, your rookie deal is 4 years with the fifth-year option. You can get salary, or you can get franchise tagged for year 6, and then it's not till year 7. You're 30 years old potentially. Pray to God you're injury-free till you can hit the open market. That means because running backs, Elijah and I were talking about it. You look at some of the peak years, and your teammate Adrian Peterson's a freak in nature, so he's kind of off to the side. But really, you have even the greats, their windows, maybe 4 or 5 years of elite 1,500, 1,800, some 2,000-yard rushers, and then that downhill hits quick.
Yeah, the analytic on right now, because the analytics on it right now are interesting, because we represent a few running backs.
Sure.
We have Evan Hall from Northwestern last year, is 4 years or 400 carries.
Okay.
That's about where you start to see a production of a running back really start to dip, unless you're the freak shows. But that's because it's such a physical position. You're seeing guys that are getting hit 50, 40 times a game, and as a team, if you draft a running back, you're going to use and abuse them for 4 years and then let them walk and then go draft another one. Because you can see it. I think that if I'm a team, if I'm a GM, I'm drafting a running back in rounds 5 through 7 every single year because they're great special teams players, and you can find a great one there. Look at Aaron Jones from Green Bay. He was a 5th-round pick. He's regarded as one of the best running backs up there, right? Jerick McKinnon, he was drafted in the 3rd by the Vikings a long time ago. He's one of the featured back now for Kansas City. I think
Terrell Davis.
Yeah, you can find them out there in those late rounds, and then you use and abuse them, and then you send them on their way.
Does that make Rex's career as a whole in the NFL more impressive to you? Because he's on year 10, I think, now, and I just looked at his stats. He's up to 500 career carries in addition to all his special teams work. He's one of those guys, the rare running backs in the NFL that's had longevity.
Yeah, it's also because he's a special teams player. He's extremely smart. He's a great locker room guy, but I'm pretty sure he's a free agent right now. Mm-hmm. Right? So, he might be done, and it might not be because he wants to be. He probably still can, but the league just looks at that as if you're 30 years old, you're a dinosaur.
Sirles, a thought on Preston Tamua, Nebraska's recent commit. He's from Hawaii. There's some discussion about, is he inside, is he an outside tackle? Nebraska has options in this 2024 recruiting class that have committed. Tamua and Pyle are the two guys I think they tag at tackle, but you've played it both. You played it in college, you played it in the NFL, but you also have moved inside. You've done time at guard. And what is needed at the college level to be a tackle, and then perhaps grow that so you can get a look at it in the NFL?
Yeah, anytime you have a guy that can play tackle, you need to play him at tackle because you never have enough of them, right? College, NFL, you can never find enough tackles that are starter caliber. And also, you have a lot of times that tackles get hurt, and you can't have a big drop-off from your 1 to your 2 tackle, right? And so even if he's not a guy that's starting right away, you want to train him as a tackle because even the NFL views you can always move in, right? If you play tackle, they assume you can play guard. But if you start as a guard and you play a long time as a guard, very few teams are going to say, well, he could probably move out. Right, that's not a thing. So I would love to see him start on the edge, start developing out there, and then a worst-case scenario, he struggles out there, then you bump him inside. But I would train him as a tackle right off the bat.
Feeling good? What are you hearing about the offensive line? You've got a lot of starts. You've got plenty of experience. Scott's coming in with good work under his belt at Arizona State. You feeling good? I know they're still searching for 7 or 8 guys, but it sounds like there might be 5 they like.
Yeah, I think going through camp, the thing I hope they find quickly is their 5. I know we talk about wanting to rotate guys in, but there's something about when you have 5 guys all working together through the entire training camp, getting used to each other. Same thing I talk, that trust that you have at the back. You want to have that trust with the guy next to you, right? You want to have that unspoken, hey, it's inside zone. I don't need to make the call because I know you know where we're going. I know where I'm going, and we're just going to feel our way through it. So I think that they need to find their first 5 pretty quickly here and then let those guys just start getting really, really comfortable with each other.
Did you ever play tight end and then move to tackle?
Yeah, I started 6 games as the heavy tight end in the NFL, so I played the heavy tight end quite often. Yep.
Okay, so that is Sirles, of course, flexing a little bit on the athleticism.
Hey, I will take the start number. It pushed it up by about 6. I went from like 24 to like 30 starts in the NFL because I started as the tight end. I will take it.
How badly did you try to push to get yourself a receiving touchdown? Did you?
No,
you know?
I didn't want that at all. Nope.
No, you didn't.
I can't catch. You kidding me? Do you see this finger? I can't catch. And I had about a pound of tape on each hand. No, I never wanted to catch the football.
What kind of ball does Kirk Cousins throw? I ask that because it's really fascinating with Peyton Manning's Netflix series. You've got Mariota, you've got Cousins, and, of course, Mahomes. And really cool look behind the scenes at Cousins, his van, but above all, his family. Really good dude, it seems like.
He's a nerd. He's a nerd, dude. Are you kidding me?
Sirles going to rip his sleeves off and scream,
I can't. I mean, Xtreme Tenors. What was that, dude? Xtreme Tenors? No, you are a professional quarterback. You do not get to say that.
Did you text him? And
Someone in Minnesota needs to open the barbecue joint up there, and they need T-shirts that say "Ow, my ribs," and they need to make a T-shirt of it because that's a Kirk Cousins staple right there. I like the thing. I'm not all the way through it yet.
I mean, neither.
But it was nice to see behind the scenes a little bit there. I mean, Brittany Mahomes is still insufferable, but it's fun to kind of watch some of that stuff and how it goes down.
Man, you didn't sing or perform, huh? You weren't a singer?
No. I mean, I did, but I'm not going to mention it on national television. And I'm really not going to do the arm moves. And I'm also not going to run around with the turduncan like my 4-year-old. It's a turduncan. It's a turduncan. Did you see it's the turduncan? I was like, Kirk, give it up. Everyone knows you're eating the turduncan.
That's funny. Well,
on the bright side, it kind of gives me hope that, there are normal people in the NFL. They're just like us.
He's a nerd. Sirles is piling on.
Kirk Cousins is not just like you, Elijah.
I was a tenor and choir growing up, too.
I didn't sing. No one asked me to.
Yeah, not with that voice.
Let me put out my Marlboro. Sirles, be good. Enjoy your show tonight, man, and thanks for the time today.
Absolutely appreciate you guys. Go Big Red.
Man, Sirles is fun. That was awesome. Piling on Kirk Cousins with his dance moves. Apparently, there was hell to pay in the locker room for that, or there will be this upcoming training camp.
I'm still a little upset about the slander we got towards tenors, though.
Did you went to what, Pound Junior High?
Irving Middle School. Well renowned for our choir program. Shout out to Mr. Rob. Mr. Rob's one of the best out there.
I get it.
One of the best choir teachers there is.
Is there a video of that?
I did not perform nor try out. What was your group called?
Well, we had a couple different groups. I was in plenty. I was in the one. Oh God.
And we reeled him in.
Okay, so.
I went to Irving as well, and I had friends that in 8th grade, so they could hang out with the good-looking gals, did the choir thing.
You got to dance with the good-looking gals.
I did neither. I didn't get to dance with good-looking gals, nor did I sing for them. Mm-hmm. So I'm not throwing shade. I don't remember what they were called. It's been 30-plus years since
middle
I've
school
been
choir
to
was
Irving
fine.
Middle School. I call it junior high. It's Irving Middle School.
we really prided ourselves at Irving Middle School on our man choir. We had a nice collection there. Damn it! I'm digging myself in a hole here. Just wait till I get to high school, Schmitty, because in high school,
prided ourselves on our man
choir.
In high school, I was in one of the varsity choirs known as Bel Canto. Which sounds
Is that old man choir?
No, it sounds well and cool. It was the Renaissance choir, so we all dressed up in Renaissance outfits and sang.
Dude,
I was the wizard.
Okay.
My brother before me was the knight.
Politically incorrect now.
No, they still have the wizard outfit still. It's like 30-something years old, and it's still absolutely disgusting.
Elijah the Wizard.
That thing smelled so nasty. I'm not sure who wore that thing through the years, but we went to like a Renaissance festival every single year.
The Starkweather era at Irving. What are you thinking?
I can tell you. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I probably sweated at least a gallon into that thing, and we couldn't clean it.
No, because it's probably a prop.
It was homemade with like sequins. If you put it in the washing machine, it would fall apart.
You had sequins, huh?
Yeah, there were sequins on the wizard
100
outfit.
feet of that thing.
I will not share junior high picture day photos because they're just hideous. But I do need to see a picture. If there's any of the Herbel family listening of the choir era.
I have a picture of me in the wizard outfit deep in the camera roll. I can go back like 8 years. But...
Just don't worry. We'll get to it. We'll post it another time. Next time you go to the the hot dog stand and put nacho cheese on there.
Oh.
Oh, I gotta. I'll pull it up for the stream here. I just gotta send it to myself.
Moonbot has chimed in again, and as a fantasy book nerd, I'd probably enjoy the choir show. Listen, the talent thing. Nick Saban was probably not in show choir. They did not have show choir in West Virginia. I doubt it. He may have sang at church, but I don't know that there was show choir in the middle school of West Virginia. Nick Saban did take some questions today from ESPN, however, and I think he was talking with Greenberg. Do we have time to run this from Saban? Let's do that as Elijah tries to find his show choir gear. The expectations for Roll Tide this year.
Well, I really don't like to set expectations. I think sometimes when you have expectations, it's actually just a, precursor to disappointment. You can take your golf game, and if your goal is to shoot less than 80, and all of a sudden you shoot 73, and that becomes a standard, then you're disappointed with 79. So I think we want to focus on the process of what we need to do to get everybody to play winning football at their position. You mentioned the quarterback position, but it's just as important at every other position for everybody to be, committed, hungry, and ready to do what they need to do to be the best player they can to play winning football.
That is Nick Saban, committed, hungry, and playing their best football. We'll have some more thoughts from Saban here before the end of the show. A no-no on a giant video board at Coors Field that Elijah discovered. Apparently a bad breakup with the guy running the scoreboard messaging. Hail Varsity continues on Wednesday. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. We say hi to Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. A Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon, how are we doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're good. We're ready to talk some baseball, and we're after the All-Star break, and some of the injuries are mounting up. The best team in baseball, the Atlanta Braves, had to say goodbye to a lefty for 60 days, it looks like, for Kolby Allard, as he's got nerve inflammation in that left shoulder, removed against the White Sox on Sunday. And he had tingling in his fingers after throwing a couple of pitches. So tell me a little bit, how often do you see nerve inflammation in that shoulder region for major leaguers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. So it's not something we see that commonly. There's definitely some of the nerve inflammation that happens that honestly we probably don't ever hear about. Some pitchers will have a little bit of some numbness and tingling here and there, and usually not a big deal enough that it kind of knocks them out of a game or puts them on the IL list. But in this scenario, you have a pitcher where it's pretty significant. They're talking about putting him on a 60-day injury list, which is a pretty long time. And so you start to delve into, what could this be? What nerve is this perhaps that's the culprit here? As you're kind of thinking about a different option. So obviously it's coming from the shoulders, at least how they describe it, more of a kind of a shoulder nerve issue. Kind of the most common nerves involved in that area. One would be axillary nerve. Another one would be your suprascapular nerve. There's another syndrome where you can kind of stretch an area kind of in the back of your shoulder, kind of back of the shoulder and below. It's a thing called quadrilateral space syndrome is a term for this. And then there's another one even that would require quite a bit of trauma or some pretty extensive kind of overthrowing, if you will, and that would be like a brachial plexus injury. Those would be some things we'd worry about in terms of nerve involvement. But essentially what happens here, most of the time these injuries are kind of stretch-type injuries. And whether it's kind of muscle fatiguing in the shoulder, you put a little extra stretch, a lot of that force gets transferred onto the nerves, and then any little stretch you can have with that nerve can lead to, most of the time, kind of what we call kind of a transient palsy, where you'll have some numbness and tingling for maybe a short period of time, some seconds, maybe up to a couple minutes. But you really stretch it enough to where you start talking about, hey, I need 60 days to get better. That, fortunately, is pretty uncommon.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us here. It's a Jock Doc Wednesday. And Dr. Brandon, one of the things we heard from the Braves was that they noticed that he was moving his arm and shoulder in between pitches and something didn't look right. And then whenever the manager went out and talked to him, it was Allard saying he felt some tingling in his fingers after throwing a pitch. What does that tell you about what this injury is and about that recovery process?
When I hear that story, I think of, kind of two scenarios. One scenario is he a pitcher that's starting to develop more kind of instability within his shoulder? And so is he maybe somebody that has, we've talked before about, obviously shoulders a ball and socket, so kind of delving into some anatomy here. Shoulders a ball and socket. On the socket side of the joint that's called the glenoid, there's this ring structure that sits around it called a labrum. Very common for players, pitchers especially at major league level, to have at least some wear and tear in that labrum just with all the force they put to their shoulder to generate the pitches and the velocity that they do. So he may be developing some labral pathology that's leading to that ball kind of being a little sloppy inside the joint. And as he puts his arm into that kind of cocking phase to bring it forward, there might be some instability there. And as that shoulder gets a little sloppy, maybe slides a little more to the bottom or inferior, that can put extra stress on either the nerve on the top, that's suprascapular, or even nerve in the, some stretch on the axillary. And that can cause some issues, some numbness and tingling going down into the fingers. That probably is the most likely scenario here. The other alternative is, maybe he's just at a point where he's pretty fatigued. Maybe he's nursing some other injuries you don't know about. And because of that, maybe those mechanics are changing a little bit where he's putting a different kind of stretch on one of those kind of nerve pathways. So I would say it's probably one of those two scenarios most likely.
When you talk about shoulder inflammation specifically, Dr. Brandon, is that something that can develop rapidly, or is that more so it takes place over time and then you finally start to notice it?
Again, it can go kind of both ways. There is kind of that kind of micro trauma that kind of occurs over time. You just kind of gradually kind of stretching this, and then all of a sudden this inflammation kind of builds up in kind of that neural sleeve, kind of the tissue that surrounds the outside of the nerve. That kind of builds up over time and eventually reaching a point where it's inflamed enough that it starts to kind of compress the nerve some with some swelling. And then you'll receive, some of these kind of paresthesias or kind of tingliness feeling. Then there's obviously the one-time events that can happen where, you go to make an awkward throw, or, maybe you're at that point of max fatigue, and then you put that arm into that kind of late cocking phase and bring that forward, and it just creates that extra stress because those muscles either aren't firing right or are not strong enough because they're fatigued. And then you put that kind of one big stretch in that nerve, and you can lead to these symptoms. There's some interesting kind of studies on this about, how much stretch to a nerve do you need before, like, let's say acutely, before it results in some kind of, noticeable symptoms. There's a kind of a rabbit model they did this on, and it showed that if you stretch up to about 6% of a nerve's length, you can start what we call conduction abnormalities, where you actually measure kind of impulses or signals going across that nerve pathway, and those can actually be altered pretty significantly only with about a 6% stretch. If you bump that up and stretch it up to about 15%, this can actually lead to irreversible damage. So it's interesting as you look at those two and you think about where some of those pitchers put their arms in that kind of late locking phase. It's probably amazing that it doesn't happen more often when they start to have what we call these paresthesias or numbness and tingling episodes show up.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday. Kolby Allard, our topic, lefty for the Braves, nerve issues. Dr. Brandon, as we wrap, a thought on recovery here. What's the treatment here aside from rest? What's the medical procedure here / prognosis moving forward?
Yeah, and so your rest is going to be a big part for sure. And then that's just a matter of, what's rest look like? Is it 2 weeks? Is it up to 4? And then what's going to be really key is to, once those muscles and the tissues have had an opportunity to rest, to really work on a strengthening program to try to correct his mechanics, maybe see where somewhere in his throwing mechanism, if there's some type of deficit or kind of what we call dyskinesis, where that kind of coordination pathway is off. Trying to find a way to fix that would be important. And then obviously worst case scenario here would be he actually has some trauma or damage to that labrum, and he is having stability issues. Therapy obviously can address some of those, but do you reach a point where you have to think about doing something structurally to help improve that?
Dr. Brandon, with this nerve inflammation, is there any fear or any risk of any permanent nerve damage occurring that could really jeopardize the rest of his career?
Yeah, I think, and That's a good question. I think that's probably the reason for that, long approach of maybe a 60-day rest period here. They're trying to avoid that. So I think in his scenario, they most likely probably caught this early, and I think there's probably a low likelihood of that kind of permanent damage, setting up. So hopefully by catching this early, it seems like they did. That I don't think that won't be the scenario. Hopefully.
Dr. Brandon, have a good rest of your week. Thanks for giving us a few minutes, and thanks for talking about this nerve inflammation here with Kolby Allard. You have a good rest of your weekend, okay?
Okay, fellas. Hey, appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday. Can get the podcast for all the guests today, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or just check out the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, for the video version of the show. Good stuff from Sirles, Dr. Brandon there, and Mike Babcock earlier. Tomorrow we'll run down Gary Barnett, Matt Verzel, going to join us to talk some O-line, and Mitch Sherman. Hold on, Brandon Vogel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Bravery. That is one way to describe Elijah Herbel. A word that comes to mind as he is taken to Twitter, and not only did he talk about dressing up as a wizard, he proved it. Nice work.
Should I bring it up for the stream, too?
Did they? Yeah, whatever you want to do, man.
Please.
It's pinata time in the
Give the people what they want.
Elijah household. When was this?
This would have been fall of my senior year. So we're talking September 2016.
Okay. All right.
I'll pull it up here for the stream.
Reminder to get buckled up. As he is feverishly working on the jaw beard at that era.
So to be clear, it's not great for radio, but for those on the stream, the people standing next to me are what we call...
two dudes standing next to you.
They're called furries.
What?
Furries is what they're called. They dress up like animals, and it's part of their personality, their persona. So they told me they liked my wizard outfit, and therefore I was like, let's get a picture. So I got a picture with the furries. I hope they're doing well now. They were not part of my choir, these two individuals here. But they do make for a great picture.
Look at you.
So it's a werewolf and another werewolf?
Yeah, wolf is a common. Look into furries after the show.
No.
Wolf, for some reason, is a common choice.
Okay.
No.
Get Junior cranked up about furries. Okay, let's tell you to buckle up. One of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Elijah, can you read the story that went on the Colorado Rockies big screen? You have announcements on the stadium Jumbotron, and whoever was doing the announcements apparently got dumped or cheated on.
Yeah, one of the two. I'm not quite sure which. But this is funny stuff. As let me pull it up here. So as a game note, fun fact type thing, using a stethoscope to listen to the heart, cardiologist can detect narrow valves, valve leakage, and or abnormal rhythm. Just a fun fact for the video board. But then the little side note underneath that is, don't bother asking him to check your heart, though, Becky. That crushed Titanic sub has more life inside it than that collapsed troll cave you call a chest cavity.
Off the top rope.
That's a little soon for the old submarine that didn't make it.
Yeah. Jeez.
Sometimes you really got to let them know what's on your heart.
Apparently. And
in terms of Becky, apparently not much.
Becky was shopping, maybe. So check the podcast out, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Again, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed is at HVarsity Radio. And yes, the YouTube channel is glorious. The full footage of Sirles showing his jacked finger is there. And really good sit down with Sirles. Busy show tomorrow as we're ready to go. Are you dressing up tonight, Elijah?
As a wizard, no. I don't think I got any fun outfit
costumes.
changes planned. I might try to sneak in a little workout. Schmidt, I've been slacking recently.
I'm thinking of that tonight, too. I need to.
It's with the humidity, it makes it tough.
Doesn't matter anymore. I can work out 3 days a week, 5 days a week. I still eat horribly, and it just goes to the spare tire.
Other than that, I've been watching a new show on Amazon called The Jury. It's really funny. They have a fake jury with one person who thinks it's a real jury, and they film the entire thing with a whole bunch of zany situations. I highly recommend that one. About halfway through it, called The Jury.
All right. Connor, busy?
Just hanging out.
All right, there we go. Back at 4 tomorrow on Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.